Hi there, guys. How you doing? So join me in this evening practice session. I'll just be, alternating between a little bit of jamming, a little bit of practicing, and if you guys want to, we can speak about anything guitar related. Doesn't have to be, the fancy stuff. Just anything you're struggling with, we can speak about that. So in case you guys are wondering, I'm just jamming the key of C sharp minor. So you can take your pentatonic box and play it here on the 9th fret. And it's gonna sound good. Now, whenever I play fast, it's a lot easier to not play the pentatonic scale, but play a scale that has 3 notes per string. So typically, I'm gonna be alternating between pentatonics for the kind of the feely, the bluesy, the melodic stuff, and then I'm gonna be more focused on maybe like a 3 note per string scale, like the minor scale, whenever I'm playing faster stuff. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But occasionally I do play fast in the pentatonic scale as well. And I kind of go between the pentatonic and like the minor scale. And also worth noticing or worth noting is that I think the more comfortable you get with different scales, the easier it gets to kind of move between the scales, and that's an important concept because it sounds. I think it sounds more natural and a bit better if you can not stick to just one scale, but kind of fade in and out of different scales. It's like you gradually add new colors. Think of it as, the rainbow rather than just throwing in some red and some blue, just like gradually transitioning. I think that's cool. Phil Stippier, what's up? Okay, so let's jam a little bit more and try exactly that. So there you have some attempts at bluesy phrasing. Then we can, speed it up a little bit to add some tension there. So there I went from like a Dorian flat 5 scale to the more traditional minor scale. Onika, what's up, man? How are you doing this evening? And are you practicing? So when this happens, that's the time to shred, right? it's always a good idea to kind of follow the backing track. So if the backing track goes wild, then it's a good time for you to go wild. Doing good, Onika, doing good. I felt like doing some, late evening practicing and see if someone wants to tune in. I haven't got any specific plan, just rather speak about anything and everything. There we go, too many notes right there. But whenever I'm doing that kind of thing, it's really, I would say it's a bit Greg Howe inspired, but I'm pretty much relying on the flat 5. So, you play your pentatonic scale, which is, and you add that blues note. But, if you really emphasize it and play it a lot, then it doesn't sound blues anymore. It sounds just aggressive. Maybe something, like Dimebag Darrell would do, so it's really how you play the notes and, how much you play the notes and how you emphasize it that really has an impact on, the end product, whether it sounds like you're just being a bit Robben Ford tasty or whether you're being heavy metal. And since I'm doing metal now, I thought it makes sense to just overdo it a little bit. So here's me overdoing that blues note. Still don't want to kind of land on it. I'd rather land on a fresh sounding melodic note. Just more pleasing to the ear. So whenever I play like a outside note, like a bad sounding note or something that really sticks out, I like to use that as like an attention grabbing tool. So once you got the listener's attention, you can kind of step back and give the listener something that's a bit more pleasing and tasty. It's a bit like I don't know, maybe you have like a restaurant or something and you want to catch bypassers' attention with some fancy signs or something. Once they've caught the attention, then maybe you still want to present them with some pretty not as aggressive food, right? You want to, make them stop and kind of check it out. It's a bit the same thing whenever you're constructing like a solo or anything with the guitar. You should think in terms of grabbing the listener's attention and then just giving them what they want, basically. Okay, so let's try that some more. So here we have the fast section, time to shred. And of course, if you can kind of, follow the backing track, so you end your fast section when the backing track ends its fast session, that's when you really can get a cool effect. Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for digging it, man. And that's a little bit harder, I think, when you're improvising, because, you can prepare yourself better than I've done now and, really learn how the backing track goes and still improvise. But the thing is, I want constant and fresh stimulation. So I don't really like spending a lot of time with one backing track unless it's something I'm trying to, create a song or something. I like to be a bit surprised by the backing track because you're going to mess up, granted, but you also have a chance of really kind of stumbling upon something that sounds good. And maybe you wouldn't have thought of if it didn't catch you off guard. So yeah, that's my excuse for not being better prepared. So let's try some more. Okay, the backing tracks call for something more a bit melodic here, I think. So we can do our pentatonic bends. Okay, it's kind of getting intensified here, so we can. So that's a good time to kind of start building some tension as well, building a bit more note density, playing a bit faster. Okay, now we should go wild. And try to keep it going. Yeah, I should have stopped a bit earlier there, but still you get the point, right? I was going crazy when the backing track was going crazy. And then try to land it somewhere melodic. So you can do your pentatonic. By the way, do let me know if levels are okay. You can hopefully hear both my guitar and the backing track. Okay, so once again, I try to kind of stick with the backing track, and with the backing track soft with its drum or snare thing, then yes, you should play Back in Black. I think I don't know a lot of AC/DC, but I do know, I think this is Highway to Hell. Back in Black, I don't remember it. I'm back in black. Yeah. That's as much AC/DC as you're gonna get out of me right now, at least. There's another classic I'm asked about quite a bit. Did a little medley there. Started out with like a sped up version of Crazy Train and then went straight into Pantera. It's fun, you know. I haven't learned a lot of new like classic riffs in a long time. I'm more focused on like kind of building some solo stuff and trying to tweak my own style. So whenever I do play those, you know, classic riffs, I try to kind of combine them like a medley, and it's fun because all of a sudden all those old riffs which you play the same way all the time. Onika, thanks for digging. Thanks, Ryan. Well, they become something new, right? You start combining them. So sometimes I'm asked about, yeah, play the Enter Sandman, baby. Oh, what happened? I took a Metallica song, turn it into Megadeth. Of course, I mess up a little bit when I speak as well. You know how that goes. Rock and roll brain can't do two things at the same time. Whoops. There, I just totally went into chromatics. So whenever you hear that, that's chromatics playing. So typically I'll do that whenever I feel really kind of tired of, you know, your standard sounds. I mean, the pentatonic scale sounds awesome, but those notes are a bit overused. They're perfect, but sometimes to appreciate the perfect, you need some imperfection, and chromatics is awesome for that. You know, when you play just all the notes, basically. I like to do them with legato, so just if we start on the 14th fret, I would do 14, 15, 16, 17, and then back again. And then if we want to, we can... That would be, I think, a slightly easier way of doing it, right? So basically just on one string, it simplifies things. So we can play the same pattern and kind of move it around. So I moved it down and then back up so I could go back into the, well, I was in F sharp pentatonic there. So here on the 14th fret. So I started chromatic, kept going chromatic, back up to the F sharp, and then we do some bluesy stuff. A lot of time, you know, that's actually the key to using those outside notes. Sometimes people ask for, you know, I can't get that jazzy outside sounding feel. You know, what scale should I use? Actually, you can use. Some people like to use like the altered scale, which is like a version of the melodic minor. But you can use anything that sounds wrong. So the point is not really what scale you use; it's how you use it. So you really need to get back into right in time, right? If you only play the wrong stuff, it's just going to sound bad. So you need to do a little bit of wrong and then get back into right, if that makes sense. So if we're in C sharp, this would be the right thing to do, right? But I could move that pentatonic scale up a half step. That would sound wrong. But it's still cool to go back and forth. Ryan, thanks for asking about my YouTube. So I have both like a GMC YouTube. That's a GMC guitar on YouTube. But you can also go to my personal YouTube, Christopher Dahl. Yeah, so let's see. Maybe we could find something, a different backing track just for some variation here. I know what this reminds me of. Cool, Ryan. Love from India. Love back from Sweden. Have a good one. Atte, when soloing, do you usually land your longer notes on first or third or fifth interval? Cool. Also, if you're on scales and not completely on arpeggios. Good question there. So basically my favorite landing notes and stuff like that, that stuff is important. And, you know, I would like to say that I don't have a specific landing note, but I think I would be lying. So I think the fifth is probably my favorite one. It's a strong note, you know, fifth and root. But I mean, the third is also nice. If you can basically catch any of those when you're looking for a strong note, you're going to be good, right? Those are the chord notes. The chord notes are the strong notes. I don't know. Yeah, about the the scales versus arpeggios. In general, scales, when I think of them as scales, they're more like vehicles for fast playing. You know what I mean? Whenever I try to think melody, arpeggio is a good thing, right? Of course, I play scale, I play melodies within scales as well, but I stopped thinking of them as scales. I think of it more of a like, which notes should I target? And that basically that kind of thinking can totally take me out of the current scale, right? So if we're in like C sharp minor, so I'm playing C sharp minor, but then maybe I want to go like out sounding. I've stopped thinking in terms of scale. I'm just building a melody based on the different intervals. And, there aren't that many intervals. We just have 12 intervals. So it's not that hard to kind of bring up one of those intervals on the fly. So, for example, if I'm around the root note, and the root note usually sounds good, right? So then I know I can just move a half step up, and I'm gonna get that, like the flat second or the minor second, the Phrygian sound, right? And then I can mix that with, one step down, which would be the major seven, basically the harmonic minor sound, and that gives me really cool colors, right? Especially if I bend from them. So that's how I think whenever I go melodic, or not always, but I think it's a good strategy, especially if you're like in a metal track and it really suits with some exotic, outside sounding, a bit, Marty Friedman sounding notes. Then definitely that approach is cool. So I'm just saying here what Atte is writing. Say if you're soloing over A minor and holds like the fourth for a long time, just wants to go somewhere. Yeah, for sure. I mean, if it's a clean A minor and you land on the fourth, you get a very special sound, right? But many times you're gonna maybe play over something where there is maybe more happening than just A minor. For example, if it's a riff in A minor, that kind of riff, although it's clearly A minor, you're still going to be going from the minor 6 to the 4th and to the 5th. So it's hard. That's why it's hard to say something general. So if that riff is in A minor, but heavy emphasis on the 4th, then you can also emphasize the 4th when you're soloing. So, but if you're playing over super clean progressions, like C all the time for like 4 bars, and then you have A minor, then you can say more general stuff about what you're doing. So those, say, Phrygians are kind of passing notes and not the ones who hold for a long time. Yeah, that's a good comment there. So I told you that I like to start from the root and then I'll add like the minor second and maybe the major 7. So the question is, how long do you do that? That's also going to be dependent on the backing track, but typically you're going to want to lightly touch upon them. Because if it sounds really good to totally hang on that minor second, then it usually means you're in Phrygian land. You're somewhere here, right? So like that riff is totally Phrygian. So Megadeth Countdown to Symphony of Destruction. So in that case, you could definitely hang on that minor second, even though it's gonna want to resolve to the root, just like this riff. Resolves from minor second to open string, right? That's the root. Lots of theory here, but this is cool stuff. So in general, you don't want to land for a very long time on those outside sounding notes. And typically, the minor second is much more outside sounding than a 4th. but a fourth is still less strong than a fifth, and so on and so forth. But again, it depends on the riff. Sometimes, I mean, yeah. Let's try some more. So let's go outside now. So if this is actually a really good setting, I think, to practice these intervals over like a metal track that isn't your, Master of Puppets, just every note. That's very hard to hear the tonal center there. But if it's something that has a clear tonal center, I don't know what that would be. Like. If it's really, if it's like a melodic backing track and not your Slayer backing track, then you can really practice this approach and think of, your choices as 12 intervals and really try, okay, so the flat fifth, how does that sound? The minor second, how does that sound? And experiment that way. That's what I've been doing here. Flat five, back to the root. Minor third, up to the fifth, and back to the root. Root, minor second, back to root, major seven. Of course, it doesn't sound very melodic when I speak. I have to be more focused, but cool question there. So how about a basic 1-4-5 chords? When you're on the 4 chord, do you follow the chord tones of that? Or if you're on minor pentatonic, say A minor, on 5th chord, you go to D minor. Well, I do both, In general, I think it sounds so predictable if you have a standard chord progression and you totally follow the chords. But the thing is, that's a good starting point. You kind of have to know how to do that if you want to be consciously not doing that, right? That's really how it goes. You got to learn the rules in order to break them. So, but the other approach is, of course, to go more random and rely on your ears. And I like that quite a bit, I have to admit it. It goes back to what I said earlier about kind of shocking yourself with what you can come up with. It's more fun to practice and play if I don't know how it's going to sound. If I totally know that it's going to be predictable, sometimes I get bored by that. Other times it's really what you want to do because maybe you're writing something or you want to, play safe. I don't know if you're for a gig or something, you don't want to experiment and risk sounding bad, So it's all, dependent on the situation. But I guess the absolute safest way where you would be in total control, that would be to learn how to follow the 1-4-5 chords super closely. And then kind of venture out of that. So you can totally decide on the fly. And typically if you, look at really great jazz improvisers, that's what they're going to know how to do. That's not me. I like the randomness in it just because that inspires me. Because again, I can stumble upon cool new stuff and then, I'm going to try to remember, that kind of worked well. Maybe try to keep that somewhere in the back of my head. And bag of tricks. And also I should say that if you're jamming in like a standard 1-4-5, a lot of times if you play just the root key, like if you're in A minor or something, and you just play the minor pentatonic scale, I mean, most of the time you're accidentally gonna be targeting the best notes. You know, that's the whole point. That's why the pentatonic scale works so well. But then, of course, there are some situations where you can really shine and show the listener, or you know, the melody, that you're in control over specific chords. But a lot of times, if you just go all in, you can still get away with a cool solo without really following the chords. Say blues can be pretty predictable, and if you're staying on pentatonic, there's those 5 notes. Exactly, that's what I was trying to say. But you can flavor it with do and six, exactly. And you can, a blues, if we're speaking like a blues with 3/7 chords, is there like an open palette, color palette, that's a word. But you can do what you want over that. I mean, that's one of the most open things there are. You can really go crazy with outside notes there. And I mean, in a way, it's super weird that we play like the minor pentatonic scale over this dominant chord. It doesn't really make sense. It's all kind of set up for doing anything you want over it, pretty much. So yeah, maybe we should do some blues backings here. I don't know, boogie rock maybe? Yeah, this is your standard in E. So I'm not following the chords here, I'm just playing the E minor pentatonic scale, which is how I think a lot of people do it. So that's how I like to do it. It doesn't sound amazing now, but again, you can really go outside and do. I don't know. So yeah, I like to just keep it random, even in this kind of situation. But admittedly, you're more in control if you don't do that. And I don't know, maybe I'll get to that someday where I want to be in total control that way. I think for me, music is all about how you know, your personal connection with it, and just seeing that this method has been working for me for a very long time. But I think, again, depends on the context, right? If you're just trying to stimulate yourself when you're practicing it, I think that works well. Yeah, if you want to go crazy with chromatics and you're not sure what is happening over the backing track, you better throw it out quickly, and you better get out of it quickly. That's really key. Because if you don't do that, you just run overwhelming risk of really accidentally, or really just showing people you're playing random nonsense. So whenever you do that outside stuff, it has to be controlled nonsense. That's really key. So try to be more. Another thing I really found is, for me, like the biggest thing is really to get my timing right. Because with this backing track, it's super kind of swingy, it's really groovy. if you play pentatonics with perfect timing, it's going to sound awesome. And if you want to add outside notes, again, with perfect timing, it's just going to sound so good. And even if you play the totally wrong notes, but with perfect timing, it's going to be okay. You might not like it in the heat of the moment, but if you listen back to it, usually that kind of stuff isn't a problem. Problem is when you play out of time. Even if you play the good notes, it doesn't sound good. If you play a bad note and it's out of time, then you really have to be, then you start sounding like pretty much a beginner, right? So it's really about timing for me, always. That's always been the top priority. Also because I think it's a weakness. I mess up way too often than I'd like to. And after that comes note choice. I always thought that my stronger sides were like sense of melody, whereas timing and rhythm has always been my weaker side. So let's work on that. There, kind of bad. Also, it's always harder when you're trying to keep perfect timing and you're playing faster and you're improvising, you know. So this backing track maybe is a little fast for what I'm doing now, but you can just go down on the note density anyway. So just do. Just let me check the settings here. Oops, something got messed up there. I just gotta check the settings here. I recently updated the app, so I just want to make sure that there is no problem. Yeah. I was at Marty Friedman's clinic, and he said that if you play the blues with regular pentatonic, people start snoring fast. But if you do the same thing, same length with a couple of beats, just a half step or up and down, all the people go, what the fuck, and you're back to normal. I like it. Yeah, that's typical Marty Friedman. So yeah, of course, I mean, if you're doing... That sounds really standard, but if you do... That's outside, right? So let's try that. I was just moving those licks up a half fret. You can move it down a half step. So that's actually a really cool tip for the blues. And it's just a super easy, or easy is the wrong word, but it's a simplistic way to play outside and jazzy notes. By the way, Atte, you're coming up with really good feedback here. Thanks for that. Thing obviously is just to visit quickly. Exactly. So as I was saying, if you play longer, or the longer you play on the outside notes, the greater the risk you're actually going to sound bad and not in control. But it can really catch the listener's attention. And yeah, I mean, if you can weave that into a run where you play a few beats, that is like a half step up or down from the correct sounding scale could really like whoa. But again, that whoa, if you mess up the landing note, turns into a yeah, or whatever the sound you make when you don't like it. Pretty cool. So if you want to tune in, I'm in E minor now. And that's how it sounds when you play just tasteless amount of notes over that blues thing. I think it's the same when you, even if you play like inside, so the good notes, but whenever you play fast and you don't land in a melodic and musical way, then I think that kind of signals you're not playing fast because it adds something to the music. You're just playing fast because you want to play fast, which is what I just did. Yeah, that's a good suggestion, Atte. We can do some double stops. So I think with double stops, I think the contrast makes a huge difference. So if you're just playing like standard single note line, and then all of a sudden you throw in a bit of double stop in there, that sounds really awesome. Has to be done tastefully though. But it's cool to mix those two. And I think that's kind of, if we were to summarize all the things we've been speaking about here, it's all about a tasty mix, right? Whether you're adding outside notes or speedy notes or these kind of double stops, you want to make it tastefully. So you can practice just emphasizing the double stops. But whenever you're performing, creating music, that's when you should grab a little bit of everything to create that perfect, soup, or lack of a better word, but you're trying to compose something that is good as a whole, not something that sounds good when you pick out one of the individual components. And I actually think those words are going to summarize this session. It's been a really cool one where we've been really honing in on note choice, which is nice because it makes the stream very well defined. And Atte, I want to thank you so much for tuning in with all your great feedback and comments. You really made the session, so thanks for that. So I'm going to end this session as much as it hurts me, but I hope I'm going to catch you guys next time. And ear training is a good question. We can definitely speak about that next time as well. Have a good one. See ya. Cheers.